Imagine being 30,000 feet over the Red Sea when your radar warning receiver suddenly blares to life. Missile lock! The Houthi surface-to-air missile is tracking your aircraft, and you have mere seconds to react. This is exactly what happened to a U.S. military crew during what should have been a routine patrol mission. What happened next wasn't in any training manual. The split-second decision these pilots made not only saved their lives, but revealed an entirely new defensive capability that military analysts are still trying to comprehend. The response from nearby naval forces changed everything about how we understand modern aerial combat in contested zones. Seconds to survival inside the cockpit. When a missile locks onto your aircraft, time doesn't just slow down, it practically freezes. For the crew of this U.S. military aircraft, that frozen moment became a life-or-death situation over the hostile waters of the Red Sea. What started as a routine patrol suddenly transformed into every pilot's worst nightmare. Picture this. You're flying through international airspace, maintaining vigilance but not expecting immediate danger. Then without warning, the cockpit erupts with flashing lights and blaring alarms. Your heart rate jumps to 180 as your brain processes what those warnings mean. A surface-to-air missile has locked onto your aircraft and is actively tracking your position. This is exactly what happened to the crew of the U.S. military aircraft patrolling the Red Sea that day. The missile warning receiver lit up like a Christmas tree, indicating something terrifying. A Houthi-launched surface-to-air missile was hunting them. What makes this scenario particularly horrifying is that pilots trained their entire careers hoping never to face this exact situation. The first 3 seconds after missile detection are critical. In that micro window of time, the crew had to process multiple streams of information simultaneously. The missile's launch location, its probable type, their own aircraft's position, available countermeasures, and possible escape vectors. All while their bodies flooded with adrenaline that threatened to narrow their focus precisely when they needed to consider every option. Intelligence reports would later suggest this wasn't a standard Houthi missile system. This particular launcher appeared to be a modified version with enhanced tracking capabilities, possibly supplied by foreign allies with more sophisticated military technology. Standard evasive maneuvers might not be enough. The pilot immediately executed a series of rapid banking maneuvers, while the weapons systems officer deployed chaff and flares, countermeasures designed to confuse radar and infrared tracking systems. But something wasn't working as expected. The missile continued tracking, adjusting its course with unsettling precision. This suggested it might be using a more advanced guidance system than previously encountered in the region. At over 2,000 miles per hour, nearly 3 times the speed of sound, this missile outpaced most combat aircraft. Even the most advanced fighters can't simply outrun such a threat. The crew's vital signs would have been off the charts as their bodies entered full survival mode, pumping stress hormones through their systems to enhance reaction time and decision-making. What made this situation particularly dangerous was the confined airspace of the Red Sea region. Unlike open ocean encounters, the geography here boxed the aircraft in, limiting potential escape routes. To the west lay Egyptian territory, to the east Saudi Arabia, both requiring diplomatic clearances to enter their airspace that couldn't be obtained in seconds. The narrow corridor of international airspace severely restricted the pilot's options for evasive flight paths. As the missile closed to dangerous proximity, possibly within 15 seconds of impact, the aircraft's electronic warfare systems detected something unusual. The tracking pattern wasn't matching known profiles of typical Houthi missiles documented in previous engagements. It seemed to be employing a multispectral tracking approach, potentially using both radar and infrared guidance simultaneously. A concerning technological leap. This realization forced the crew to make a split-second tactical innovation. Standard countermeasures deployed individually weren't breaking the lock. In a moment of inspired desperation, they executed what military analysts would later call a countermeasure saturation tactic, deploying multiple types of defensive systems simultaneously while performing an unconventional flight maneuver. The pilot executed a modified high-G corkscrew descent, while simultaneously deploying a carefully synchronized combination of electronic jamming, chaff dispersal, and infrared countermeasures. This created what one defense analyst would later describe as a sensory overload for the missile's guidance system, presenting too many conflicting data points for its tracking algorithms to resolve. The unexpected guardian, naval intervention, miles below the desperate aerial dance beneath the surface of the turbulent Red Sea waters. A different kind of drama was unfolding, one that would transform a near-certain tragedy into an unprecedented military achievement. The USS Carney, a mighty Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, had detected the missile launch through its SPY-1 radar system, a technological marvel capable of tracking objects the size of a baseball at distances exceeding 100 miles. Inside the Combat Information Center of the naval vessel, radar operators watched with growing alarm as the hostile signature climbed rapidly toward the friendly aircraft. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Rodriguez, the tactical action officer on duty, faced an impossible situation. Standard doctrine gives us clear protocols for defending our own vessel, she would later explain in a classified debriefing, but extending our defensive envelope to protect an aircraft at that altitude and distance? That was something we'd never rehearsed. What happened next broke every rule in the naval defense playbook. Within seconds of detecting the threat, Rodriguez made a decision that would later be studied in military academies worldwide. Instead of following conventional wisdom, which dictated that ship-based defense systems were exclusively designed to protect the vessel itself, she ordered a complete reconfiguration of the ship's Aegis combat system. The technical challenge was staggering. The Aegis system, primarily designed to intercept threats to the ship, needed to be rapidly repurposed to create a protective barrier around an aircraft moving at hundreds of miles per hour through three-dimensional space. This required the weapons systems specialist to manually override safety protocols that had been hard-coded into the system's operational parameters. We had approximately 40 seconds to accomplish what typically requires 3 days of preparation and testing, recalled Chief Weapons Officer Marcus Coleman. His team had to recalibrate the firing solutions for the ship's RIM-66 standard missiles and reprogram their proximity fuses, all while the target aircraft performed erratic, evasive maneuvers that continuously changed the geometric calculations. The missile continued its relentless pursuit as the ship's 5-inch Mark 45 lightweight guns came online, accompanied by the distinctive mechanical whir of the Phalanx CIWE's close-in weapon system, rotating into position. The targeting challenge was unprecedented: how to strike a hostile missile without endangering the very aircraft they were attempting to protect. A miscalculation of mere milliseconds in detonation timing could prove catastrophic. What truly distinguished this intervention was the intuitive human decision-making that exceeded the capabilities of automated systems. Lieutenant Rodriguez and her team had to improvise a solution that military planners had never conceived. They leveraged the ship's electronic warfare suite to project a defensive corridor of electromagnetic interference, essentially creating what analyst Dr. Catherine Zhu would later term a shield umbrella, extending thousands of feet into the sky. With the hostile missile now seconds from impact, the USS Carney executed its unconventional defense plan. The ship launched a precisely timed barrage of interceptors while simultaneously flooding the engagement zone with a specially modulated electronic countermeasure pattern. This created momentary blind spots in the missile's guidance system exactly when it needed to make final targeting adjustments. The coordinated defense created a protective corridor that disrupted the missile's tracking algorithms during the most critical phase of its terminal approach. When the missile attempted to make its final course correction to intercept the aircraft, it encountered an electromagnetic environment so thoroughly confused that its guidance systems failed catastrophically. The missile veered sharply off course before detonating harmlessly over open water. What the Carney accomplished represents a fundamental advancement in integrated air and missile defense, explained Admiral James Harrington, commander of U.S. Naval Forces Central Command. They effectively extended the ship's defensive umbrella to protect an asset that was miles away and thousands of feet above them, something our systems were never explicitly designed to do. This unprecedented coordination between air and naval assets has forced military strategists to reconsider fundamental assumptions about defensive capabilities. The success demonstrated that with sufficient ingenuity, existing systems can be adapted far beyond their intended parameters to counter evolving threats. Most importantly, it showcased the irreplaceable value of human creativity and decision-making, even in an age of increasingly automated warfare. The cost-effective game-changer, APKWS revelation. The traditional boundaries between air and naval defenses dissolved that day, but when investigators analyzed the footage of the incident, they discovered something that challenged all established military doctrine. A weapon designed for a completely different purpose had been repurposed so ingeniously that it would forever transform the economics of modern warfare. Amid the coordinated chaos between the evasive aircraft and the protecting naval vessel, a third element emerged that no one expected: the advanced precision weapon system known as APKWS. But what was truly revolutionary was not the weapon itself, but how it was employed. This system, originally conceived to attack ground targets such as light armored vehicles or infantry positions, was redesigned in real time to deal with a supersonic air threat. The footage captured of the engagement stunned military analysts. A salvo of small rockets could clearly be seen launched from a platform, changing trajectory mid-flight thanks to their laser guidance system, heading directly toward the Houthi missile. The most surprising thing? The precision with which these projectiles, never designed to intercept air-to-air missiles, accomplished exactly that impossible mission. Imagine this: while conventional defensive missiles like the AIM-120 AMRAAM cost approximately $1 million each APKWS rocket is worth a mere $35,000. This astronomical difference in cost represents a true revolution in war economics. With the price of a single traditional defensive missile, nearly 30 APKWS rockets can be deployed, creating a virtually impenetrable defensive barrier at a fraction of the cost. What makes this application particularly brilliant is the compact size of these rockets. At just 19 inches long and less than 3 inches in diameter, these projectiles can be carried in massive quantities compared to bulky conventional air-to-air missiles. A single helicopter or light attack aircraft can carry dozens of these weapons, exponentially multiplying their defensive capability. What we witnessed that day was a complete reimagining of how we use our arsenal, explains General Raymond Thomas III, who oversaw the post-incident analysis. Essentially, we took an unguided Hydra 70 rocket, transformed it with a relatively inexpensive precision kit, and had a missile interceptor for a fraction of the usual cost. It's like turning a Toyota into a Ferrari by only paying for an oil change. The effectiveness of these repurposed rockets was extraordinary. Despite lacking the sophisticated heat tracking or radar systems of conventional air-to-air missiles, the APKWS demonstrated lethal accuracy. Its laser guidance system, normally used to hit tanks or bunkers, was recalibrated to lock onto the enemy missile mid-flight, something no military manual contemplated as possible. This unique incident has forced the Pentagon to completely rethink its air defense strategy. Why spend billions on complex anti-missile systems when a much cheaper solution could offer comparable results? According to preliminary estimates by the Department of Defense, widely implementing this tactic could represent savings of up to $8 billion over the next 5 years. What began as a missile lock-on over the Red Sea has become a watershed moment for modern warfare. This three-part response, pilot ingenuity, naval innovation, and cost-effective weaponry, has rewritten military doctrine overnight. The implications are staggering. For asymmetric fighters like the Houthis, the strategic equation has fundamentally changed. Their million-dollar missile systems can now be neutralized by weapons costing pennies on the dollar. It's not just a tactical victory, it's economic warfare in reverse. As this critical waterway remains contested, the lesson is clear. Adaptation trumps brute force. The future of aerial superiority won't be won by the biggest budgets, but by the most creative solutions.